The video that I'm about to show you is one of the best live coding demos that I think I've ever seen. And it's not just because the presenter builds a GitHub Copilot extension from essentially scratch, but also because I've never seen anyone live code regex before. This happened at Microsoft Build back in May, and we liked it so much we wanted to bring this demo here to show it to you. So without further ado, I give you Joyce from the vscode team building a GitHub Copilot chat participant. Check it out.
Today, over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to show you an example of an experience that you can build out, and then we're going to dive into the actual code that enables that experience right here in this session. And by the end of it, you'll be an expert in building your own chat participant. For those of you who've done VS Code extension development before, this is no different than our usual boilerplate VS Code extension. I've gone ahead and filled out all these standard properties here. So you can see I've got my publisher, and I've got the name of the extension. One thing that I want to call out is this is a normal VS Code extension, but it does have extension dependencies. So it integrates with the Copilot chat extension, and it also integrates with the Microsoft SQL extension in order to pull in that SQL database context. Now let's go ahead and start telling VS Code about our chat participant. And before I do that, I'm just going to show you that I have the extension development host running here. And as you can see, if I go in here and type @ you don't see the Microsoft SQL extension here. And that's just really proving that we're starting from 0. So here, I'm going to go ahead and start saying that I have a chat participant, and I'm going to give it an ID. It's going to be VS Code MS SQL chat. The name here is going to be MS SQL, and the description is going to be generate SQL queries from natural language. And now that I have that, that's enough to tell VS Code that our chat participant exists. Next, we're going to switch over into the extension.ts file, and this is where we're going to declare our chat participant in actual code, and this is TypeScript, of course. So first of all, we're going to go into the new VS Code chat API namespace, and we're going to call create chat participant. The ID here is going to match what we had in the package.json file. And here, we're just going to get in our handler a couple of interesting pieces of information about the request that we received from our user. So first of all, we need to know what the user asked. And the way that we do that is by looking at request.prompt. And that is just going to be the string that the user actually entered in the chat. Pretty simple. And now, in order to forward that along to a language model, we can use the new VS Code LM language model namespace to select a chat model. And the argument that we pass here is just going to be a language model chat selector, and this is our way of allowing you to specify which specific model you want to talk to. I'm just going to go ahead and say that I want to have access to the GPT-4 family of models, and we're going to save that off. And once I've got that going, I can go ahead and send a request. And I need to, of course, await that and make this entire handler async. And once I've done that, then I can go ahead and send a request to this language model that I've got access here to here. And the way that we communicate with language models is with an array of chat messages. So I'll define that in just a second and then fill out the rest of these parameters in a bit. And the way that we're going to declare this array of messages is using a utility class from VS Code language model chat message .user. And that's just going to be a user chat message representing the user's actual query. And we're going to pass that along to the language model here. So once I've done that, I'm going to save that result off. And now we want to know what the language model actually said back to us. The way that we do that is by looking at the chat request text property. And this is going to be an async iterable of just tokens that get streamed back to us. And we have built-in support in the extension API for actually streaming all of this data back progressively to the chat UIs so that as a user, you never have to wait for all of that data to come back to you. The way that we do that is by iterating over that. So let's go ahead and iterate over our stream of data. And you'll notice this response object here. This is a chat response stream. And if I go ahead and take a look at what IntelliSense has to say about it. There are a couple of different things that you can put into the chat UI representing actions as well as data that come back from the language model. In this case, we are just going to put in Markdown. And with all of that being said, we now have everything we need to address a question to our chat participant in the chat UI and receive a response that gets reported in the UI. So let's go ahead and reload our extension development host here. and try out our chat participant for the first time. Let's go ahead and make sure our SQL database is alive. And now if I go into chat, I can type @ and you'll see that I have this MS SQL agent that wasn't there before. I can go ahead and say hi and receive a response that's powered by a language model. So that's really cool, just to get started with. But now if I go ahead and ask it for a SQL query, generate a SQL query that combines data from all my tables, it's not actually going to do much better than the base experience that I showed you at the very beginning of my demo. And the reason for that is we haven't given it any special context. So it's going to do just as poorly as the first time that we tried. And let's switch back into the extension and make sure we fix that. So the way that we're going to do this is I have this utility function that is just going to call into the Microsoft SQL extension to get database context. What this context is going to be is just a set of creation scripts for actually setting up that database and the tables that I already had loaded up. And it's just going to be concatenated to the front of my user message, and that's all we're going to do. And then we can reload the window and see if Copilot Chat does any better. All I did was put in those creation scripts into a user message, and now if I go ahead and hit submit, as we can see, this is taking a little bit of time, so we can improve that slightly right after this, but we'll get a language model response that actually is context aware of the exact structure of my databases. So that's really, really simple. That's all you have to do. And as we saw, that took a little bit of time. So one thing that we can do here is to tell the user actually that progress is happening. And so let's go ahead and say that we are reading database context. And that'll just give the user some indication that we're doing work behind the scenes. So now that I have that, one of the missing pieces from my original demo is we'd like to have that run query button that integrates with the Microsoft SQL extension to allow me to run and validate the query that was suggested. In order to do that, though, we have to actually be sure that there is a SQL query in the response from the language model, because we might have just gotten lucky. So let's go ahead and also make sure that we include an instruction to that effect. And so I'm just going to add a new user message here. And I'm going to say you should suggest a SQL query for my task that begins with triple backtick SQL and ends with triple backtick. And then now that we have some guarantee that there is going to be a markdown code block containing a SQL query in the answer, we can go ahead and make sure we save that off, and then concatenate all of the data that we get from the response stream into that variable. And then once we're done with that, let's write a little regex to actually keep track of all of the, to actually pull that query out. And so we're going to look for anything that's not a new line, and we're going to then look for a new line here, and then we're going to make sure that we match on all of the data inside the code block, and followed by new line, and then triple backtick. And then once we're done with that, we're going to execute that regex against the data that we got. And let's save that off into a match variable. And then if our match was successful, then we can go ahead and put a button into the response here. And the title is going to be run query. The command will be MS SQL chat run query. We'll define that as well in just a moment here. And then we are going to pass along the query that we actually received from the language model. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and also register our command here. And this is just going to be a regular vscode command. There's nothing special about this. So run query, and then in the handler here, we get a SQL query. And all we're going to do to execute this is, again, we've got a utility function beforehand that is going to integrate with the Microsoft SQL extension and actually create that SQL editor and run it against our database connection. With all of that, I think we have everything we need to replicate that original experience. So let's go ahead and reload the window one more time and see our extension. I am here. I am going to ask my question again. And as you can see, it's now got that progress indicator saying that we're reading database context. And we're going to let the language model think about that. And then we get our run query button as before. And if I go ahead and close that out and execute my query, you can see that it worked exactly the same as before, and we just built that experience out in a couple dozen lines of code. I also want to share a couple of more things that we can do with the VS Code extension ecosystem. So because this is a regular VS Code extension, one of the things that I can do is just integrate smart actions, like Bridget was telling you about earlier, throughout the editor. And so, for example, I just showed you how you can ask any question about SQL inside chat. But suppose I want to make it easy for anyone on my team to be able to onboard to my SQL database. Now, it would be really nice if I could just right-click on this SQL Explorer here and have an action that would give me an overview of the structure of my database. So let's go ahead and actually implement that. And again, this is real quick and easy. So going back into my extension code here, I'm just going to register yet another regular VS Code command. And this one is going to be summarize database. And in this handler here, all we're going to do is execute a built-in VS Code command, workbench.action.open.chat.open. And we are going to address a question directly to our MS SQL participant here, generate a summary of my database. And now that I've done that, I'm going to switch back over into the package.json file and actually register that action to the context menu to make sure that it shows up. So the way that we do that is by looking at menus, and we have view item context. And here we are going to say that we have a command. The command is going to be summarize database. And we want to make sure that doesn't show up on every single context menu. So we're going to do that whenever the view is the Object Explorer. And the view item is either server or database. And let's close that out here. And we can also have to actually register this command. So let's put in that registration right here. That's just going to be an array, and we're going to put in one entry here. The command is also going to be summarize database. Got to take out those extra quotes right there. And the title of this action is going to be summarize database. Oh, and let's also make sure that we give this action a group so that it appears in its own category. All right, and now that we have all that, let's reload the extension development host for the final time today and try out our new context menu action. So database online, right-click here. You can see I have this summarize database action that wasn't there before. And if I select that, it addresses a question directly to my chat participant, and that's just a 2-click operation to get a high-level natural language summary of my database structure. Really quick and simple. And to recap, what we just showed is how you can extend your Copilot chat experience with custom functionality to ground it in context that's available inside your editor in order to provide an experience that's far more integrated and personalized and actionable for your scenarios. So our APIs are available for you to build with today. We can't wait to see what you build.